jump quickly, and I've grossly past the time to do a quick unagendized board reports. We'll start off with you, Supervisor Nance.
On Friday, I met with all the school districts in District 5. I think it's a safe one, with Dean Grouden and Melody, and we're trying to form a group, a truancy group for the schools to help with some of their ADA problems. And I really appreciate Melody's input. And I told Jennifer to go to the wrong building, which is my fault.
I went to admin. There was nobody there.
But I think we had a really productive meeting, and I really hope to really see some progress in that area for the schools and to help the teachers and the school system.
Thank you. Supervisor Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just a couple items. Last Thursday, the NORTEC meeting in Chico. It was a kind of an informative meeting. A couple things. First of all, kind of like a working committee dealing with governance, dealt with some issues that I had raised almost a year ago now in terms of the function of the Joint Powers Agreement and the way it was set up and then the way it evolved into running. And it's now grown into 11 counties, so it becomes less and less about who we are as counties, which form the JPA, and the services being rendered versus kind of this little elite bureaucracy that pretty much does as they please and have some lack of accountability for, in some cases, their actions. And so I think the governing board that meets in conjunction with the Workforce Investment Board, which is required by the federal law as kind of like basically an advisory body to make sure that the programs and the services are rendered meet the needs of the various interests, employers, employees, you have educational institutions, training, you've got labor unions, you've got everybody's in the mix. So I was tasked to be on that group to kind of look at how to revise that. My attitude was if they weren't interested in bringing it back so there's some accountability for the administrative oversight of the entity, that I'd be in favor of us just withdrawing from the JPA. I mean, we would still be part of the region, but we would not be part of the governance structure, which is more importantly if things go south, which they could when you don't have that kind of accountability, at least when they're handing out the bills to the government entities to pay for their share, at least we're out of that picture. But hopefully that won't be the case, and we'll keep the board abreast of that. Also at that meeting, they had an excellent presentation done by the CEO of a corporation called Milestone, and you might want to go out and Google and check it out. But it was a young fellow that grew up in the Biggs area. He was born and raised in Biggs and grew up in, I think, in Yuba City. And he eventually realized, that farming, he was part of a farming family, East Indian farming family, and he eventually realized that wasn't going to be his future, and he migrated to the Bay Area where he got involved in basically the high-tech computer, internet, all that arena, and developed this company called Milestone. And it's an affiliate with the Google organization. And he recently established a pod in Chico, and he wound up hiring this last fall in a very short order. And Tracy Holt, who is the executive director of the Alliance for Workforce Development, who's been here numerous times, and they are responsible for Lassen County along with MoDOT, Plumas, Sierra, and take on the task of supervising the programs in Butte County. They basically had a job fair where they had to round up 1,000 applicants. And they hired like 200 and some out of that pool. They came back a few weeks later and got another pool of 800 applicants, and they employed in very short order roughly about 365 people. Of course, everybody, all the counties that are there saying, well, hey, why don't you come our way in terms of providing. And what this gentleman does with Milestone is his company contracts with a whole host of big corporations to provide data and other type services. As a company, if you need computer service, you need a call center, you need whatever it is, that's what these folks kind of do. They like to target university communities, and they try to get the cream of the crop of the young graduates coming out and get them kind of programmed in. But in the source of his presentation, he ran a video clip, and I would encourage you, I'm going to try to see if I can get it captured, because I think it's one that would really be helpful in all of us. I think, Richard, when it comes to our county staff, I think as we think about how we work, like in this thing with the airfield and economic development and growth. And a fellow by the name of Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, you could go out and Google him on YouTube, and a whole bunch of videos pops up. There's an organization known as TED, TED.com, TED.com. TED is some acronym for, it's kind of like these entrepreneurs that are, out there making mega millions, but they put on these seminars and talks trying to explain to people how to approach problem solving and how they can put themselves in the winner category. He talks about why did Orville and Wilbur Wright do what they did and not the other contemporaries. Why did Martin Luther King become the leader of the civil rights movement the way he did. And he talked about decisions people made when it comes to marketing, who we are and what we do, and why Apple has been successful selling their product versus other companies. And one of the examples he used was in this little video. It's about 18 minutes long, and it's worth seeing. He talked about how flat screen TVs came along. Well, Gateway Computer had been doing flat screen monitors for years, and when flat screen TVs became real popular, how many people do you know have a Gateway flat screen TV? And as I've shared this in the few days since that meeting, I've actually run into somebody who claims that they have one. I thought, wow. But the thing is you have, he calls it the golden circle, and you take like the seal. You have like the outer ring, you got a middle ring, and then you got the center. And he goes, the outside is the what, the middle ring is the how, and the middle is the why. And so people, they want a product, whether it's an MP3 player, whatever it's got their focus, and they will take and companies will try to market that. So this is what they want, this is how we're going to get it to them, and they're marketing. So Dell, Gateway, all those folks put out these kind of products. But other companies, and the ones that are really the most successful, are the companies that start from the why and come out. They come out and talk about why their product is the best product out there on the market. We've got a sleek design, we're innovative, we're blah, 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 whatever it may be. So when people line up to spend their money to buy something, it's the companies or the individuals or the movements or the brains that work from the why out versus the what and how coming in. And it's a very powerful, I thought a very powerful presentation. So he found his company, was floundering. He put all of his resources. He had about $250,000 that he mustered up to invest in his company. He was down to his last $30,000. And he stumbled in and met, some of these people about 3 or 4 years ago. And and started looking at why versus the how and what, and he turned his company around, and within a very short order, he was the best of the best out there that the big companies were giving him contracts to provide services, and turned it into a multi-million-dollar operation. And he's in Chico, he's in the North State, he has an affinity for the area. But I think that message is one that I think would be worth looking at, and maybe how we can apply that same principle. And that was his message to everybody in the room, is take these principles and go back to whatever it is you do. And if you apply that, you might be surprised by the success you could achieve. And more importantly, this is the success I've had because of this change of thinking. So I bring that for what it's worth, but I thought it was really worthwhile being there and listening to that. And hopefully we could see some of that rubbing off to the other counties here in the North State. And then yesterday I had the opportunity to travel over with Kay White, who's the new chair. She represents Lassen as well on the Planning and Service Area Agency and Aging Board. And we're in the process of trying to select a new executive director. It was most of the day long, interviewed 4 applicants, narrowed it down to 2. And so we're going to be in a process. I'm going to be looking to, Richard, if I can, some help from the HR department here in the county, your office, to try to vet the applicants that we have, and also maybe the sheriff's department help us do maybe some of the background and vetting of the application to make sure that what we saw. One of the applicants just gave an incredible interview. I was like totally blown away. Somebody who I know, we've known in the community, that applied for it. And so anyway, those are the 2 things. Hopefully by the March 17th meeting, we'll have a selection in that program to maybe pick up and move on. But I would commend both of those to you. Check out Simon Sinek on YouTube, and you might find it kind of revealing, kind of informative. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, last week I went down to RCRC down in Sacramento. And there we had this John Perez, the speaker, He come over and visited with us, which was kind of unprecedented to get a Democratic speaker to come over. That's the first time ever, I think. But anyway, he had some good things to say. He's looking at maybe getting the Williamson Act funding returned possibly. It's looking pretty good for this next year, so that's a good thing. They're also looking
What
at,
about the fire fees? With those?
that's probably not gonna happen. But they are looking at reversing some of the Medi-Cal and Medi-Cal cuts that were put in last year. So they're working on getting that back. Also, they're looking on maybe getting some repair funding returned, but we're gonna have to work on that. That's not a high priority for the governor, but he seems to be interested in that. Also learned that Glenn County, they're suing the Department of Fish and Wildlife for their in lieu fee taxes. And they're actually got a court date for that coming up this fall. And that also, the court, not only for the in lieu fees are back, but they're also including the interest on it. So, I don't know if that's something we can join on, or if it's too late for that or not, I don't know.
That's a healthy discussion on coconut.
Yeah. So anyway, let's see, what else? The other thing they talked about is marijuana issues. There's probably gonna be something coming up on the ballot in either 14 or 16. It's probably gonna be 16. And they were kind of suggesting that the counties get ahead of the curve on this, so we don't end up like Colorado. They probably feel the best way to address it is through the land use issues. They don't see any cuts in secure and rural schools funding and no sequestration, so the payments should be seeing those by mid-February. The Bay Delta Conservation Plan, here again, it's government at its finest. It's a 40,000-page document. And so if anybody wants to read that, you got till April 14th to get your comments in. Richard, I think we went to that CalPERS thing down in Sacramento, so we'll need it.
Which, I was at Trinidad last week.
Oh, yeah, the last, that's what I thought you went. Anyway, they're looking for input on the new changes for the CalPERS. So I'll put that out for you to get that to RCRC. And then the water bond, they're still working on that. They're looking to get it dropped down from 11 billion to 7 billion. There's still a lot of workings on that to try to get it done. That's kind of where they're at on that.
Thanks, Darren.
So that's covered up.
Thank you. Thanks for that. Last week, I attended, along with Supervisor Chapman, the pool committee we sit on. We're moving forward at a fast pace. We've come up with the criteria to list its points, and everything gets weighted on a variety of things based on how quickly can you start and who owns a property and this and that. There's a whole list of stuff. The documents out there to the public. It's quite interesting how they're all rated. There's about 18 sites.
It
or
was
so.
18 or 19 sites.
Yeah,
and
so, we basically narrowed it down to 3. 2 of them have geothermal, one doesn't. Obviously, the geothermal is heavily weighted as well. I think the site that scored the best was actually the 800 South Street where the Roosevelt Pool.
It's the property between Roosevelt School and Roosevelt Pool, the county-owned property.
Yes, yeah.
And the non-geothermal site is also county, and that was the North Mesa Street property was identified. And the third one was Credence,
Yeah.
school site.
So those are the 3 we'll be focusing on, and quickly here, come up with we're going to come up with a decision on which one to move forward with. So that's exciting, and things are happening. They're happening quickly. So
There is a special meeting this afternoon to tour the 3 properties and possibly some of the runner-up properties, but I'm going to be at the solid waste board, so I'm not going to be able to attend that.
me either. I'm going to make that meeting. I'm going to do the tour on my own another time. I didn't realize I had some other stuff. So anyway, that's all I have. But Violet wanted. We had a lot of discussion on Termo and stuff with the ambulance service, so I got the chore to read out her poem, and I hope I don't butcher it because I don't want her to have a few choice words for me the next time she's here. Anyway, here it goes. Termo. The Christmas in the morning air, the stillness in the night, they always bring my childhood back when everything seemed right. Coyotes howling from afar, the whistle from the train, the awesome smell from blooming brush, aromas from the rain, the rustling from the wavering rye, the morning calls of doves, the progress that we mortals make, destroy such simple loves. The bleating cries from herds of sheep, their dust clouds in the sky, no longer drift like ghostly sheets to haunt the passers-by. The oldsters with their story tales, these folks, I love them so. I'm glad I was a youngster then, some 50 years ago. When old blue northern crossed the plains with snow drifts 8 feet high, and snowshoes were the only way to reach the food supply. When engineers would wave hello and brakemen wave goodbye, when water troughs were swimming holes and kites would ripple high. These memories I've laid away in my portfolio, and I'm so glad I was a child some 50 years ago. From our poet laureate Violet Stout. And Violet certainly does, add a lot to the.
She
these are
would have
amazing.
been here today, but she called me last, she had a kind of an unfortunate accident last week in her backyard. She was trying to cut down one of her trees. And you know how Violet is, anyway, she took a nasty fall, and she's got a couple good shiners and kind of bruised up and so forth, but she, last night, well, actually last couple days, called me to come and pick up this poem so Larry could read it. Especially after everybody was talking about terminal last
Yeah.
week.
So, hopefully Violet catches that footage on the YouTube. Violet, I hope I did all right, give me the finger while you're watching. Okay, let's go to H7, the interim lease, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to ask you to indulge me here a little bit. I negotiated with Smith, Pizzullo, and Hayes a lease for the one-stop building in Hurlong that the county is currently occupying. That's what you have in front of you. I want to let you know Retta's really keeping me on my toes, and she had a few suggested changes that came after the agenda posting. So I'm just going to go through those quickly. I've gone over them with Mr. Smith and have a clean copy with those changes if the board so desires. But the nuts and bolts of the lease are $1 a month, and the county pays the costs of maintaining the facility, insurance, taxes, and that's really, and of course heating and utilities, that sort of thing. So does anybody have any questions on that before I go through the changes? Okay. I'll quickly go through. The assessor split the assessor's parcels out there and changed the AP number. So I'm deleting that from the assessor's parcel number from all references on the lease. The address is correctly stated as 447-375 Nevada Street. It's had other addresses in the past on DS Hall, but that is the official county surveyor issued address. So I've deleted that. Number 6, under 6A, tenant agrees to pay landlord, and the $sign, red is asked to put not applicable in there, and a couple of these are going to be like that. So I put that there. In 8, the same applies, not applicable, not applicable, not applicable. 9, same thing, not applicable, not applicable. 10, same thing. And then we move down to item 17, and 17B is now going to read, landlord shall maintain roof, foundation, exterior walls, and common areas rather than tenant. Number 21, not applicable. Number 23, not applicable. Number 24, not applicable. Number 34, no boxes were checked in the copy you have, but we're going to check the box that says landlord states that premises has not been inspected by a certified access specialist, because it hasn't been. We have left that blank. The other two items.
Richard, on 34, the second set of boxes is going to be has not, is going to be checked.
Let me go back here. 34, yes, the second box will be checked to say has not been inspected.
And then the second has not been determined.
Well, it'll be blank. That's, if it was checked yes, then it would either have been determined or not determined to meet the standard, but since it hasn't been inspected, that'll just be blank. Both boxes. So the other two addendums that are called for in the lease are one, identification of any existing damage that is on the property. Mel and Peter are going to inspect the property me next week and come up with that before I sign the lease. The other is the lease calls for approval by the landlords of any subleases. And so we're gonna identify the individuals that are currently subleasing, and that will become a part of the lease before we sign it. So, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to respond to them.
Any questions from board members?
I have one question. So, Richard, going back to number 17, so A is gonna be unchecked, but B is gonna be checked on number 17?
Yes. Will be checked as landlord, so it will be checked. B will be not checked, which is also.
And then, as far as paying the taxes, I mean, is that just gonna be part of the rent, or is that gonna be in addition to the rent?
That'll be in addition to the rent. That's specified in here under,
Number 14?
yes, I believe it is 14, yes. Yep.
All right, good enough.
Also, what's not on there, any repairs will have to be pre-approved by the county, and Retta's whispering in my ear that we ought to make that in writing. I don't know if that's okay. It's just
That's
specified, pre-approved.
in addition to this, it would be,
Okay, so we'll make that change. Yeah, the only other question we had is the leases with the county of Lassen, and I know Mel and I've gone back and forth a little bit about this, but should it be specific to the department? My thoughts on our county of Lassen is the county of Lassen, whether it's the tax collector department or the road department, but if there's another view, I'm open to that.
I mean, before, who owned the building?
It was county of Lassen, but I think it did specify the department.
well, at one point, we had ordered to transfer it to the
Yeah.
department, so that apparently never happened, so.
I think this is gonna be relatively, interim agreement, so.
I did fail to mention that it is a month-to-month lease with 60-day notification for us if the landlords are wanting.
I think we ought to leave the name up to Melody, because she's the one that has the grant funding and whatnot, so probably it's gonna fit her needs. I would go that way.
All our other health and social services leases are in Health and Social Services Department name. Mine being County of Lassen, but I want to be notified if there are any issues with the property because I've got the staff there.
How about we say Lassen County Health and Human Services?
Lassen County and County,
Or care of Health and Social Services, which is fine.
that's fine.
I don't think the landlord really care where their dollar comes from.
We just wanna make sure all correspondence gets to Mel, that's our concern.
And the landlords are here, I don't know if they have any comments.
How'd you come up with that exorbitant rental?
We started at 50 cents and rounded up. We can take payment.
I'd like to thank all parties involved in this negotiation for kind of soothing the fears of the people on Hurlong and Doyle. What's gonna happen with this building in their one-stop.
Thanks, I shared the
Yeah.
remarks, and like I mentioned in one of the meetings, mistakes are human, we all make them, and we will continue to make them, but the important thing that you measure is how you react and handle a mistake, and I think that the reaction on all parties and how we're handling it is good, and I mean, we move forward, but the community's still being served, and thank you to Larry and Steve and your partner for working with the county, and thanks Melody for working with the arrangement, and I'm hopeful that everything will have a good outcome. So, is there any any members of the public that have anything to say on this item? Okay, So we'll bring it back to the board. Action requested is to approve the interim lease. And with those changes, so. Eric?
I'd like to get Mel's input on this. And what's your, I mean, is this something you can live with, Melody?
Yeah, $1 a month is pretty affordable for us, and even the taxes are not gonna be that much, and it shouldn't impact the family resource centers, but we really have to look at it as a temporary situation, and, you know, in government, temporary could be a while, but we really have to look at either getting into another county-owned facility somewhere, or maybe adding to one county-owned facility somewhere, or we have to talk about fixing the building to meet ADA requirements at some point, and that could get quite pricey because we know how bad it is, but that's, you know, it works for now, for sure.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
Mr. Chairman, along the lines of, I'd like to ask Melody, because I think it's not just the ADA issue, and I think it was an issue we had with the building even beforehand, and that is the energy cost. And I know at one point, you know, a grant was sought, and it was a fairly sizable grant to replace the heating and the cooling unit to try to help bring down, the monthly cost of providing for that particular facility. I know it was suggested by Mr. Hammond that apparently Plymouth Sierra Rural Electric has some public benefit type things, which I'm surprised wasn't pursued even beforehand, and it was still under county ownership. But I think one of the motivations to look at alternative arrangements down the road is the fact that you can't sustain, you know, in the program, the kind of costs that are involved budget-wise. Yeah, the $1, you know, a month is a great deal, but when you've got $26,000 going up in terms of cost of being in the building, which we were paying before the transfer, and you're going to continue to pay under this particular document, you know, I think is something that has to be addressed. So that combined with ADA and everything else. So I'd like to see, you know, the staff work with the owners and others to try to find ways to mitigate and to minimize, you know, those particular impacts, you know, whether it's interim or long-term, you know, it's something that is going to be really essential, I think, to being in that facility. And I think that's the issue that you brought to us earlier on, even before the current situation, that we have to find a way to do it. And that's true with most of those buildings that were out there. That was part of the motivation the Army had to surplus them, and the county was never intended to be, you know, a long-term property manager. The idea was that those properties should be, you know, passed on to, and dismantled and passed on to the private sector, because they have, you know, maybe the means to be able to address those kind of improvement issues. But if we're going to remain there, that needs to be given some priority, and I would hope the staff not just shuffle it off to the side for the time being.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else to add, we will bring it back for action. So, we're looking for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Could you state the motion?
The motion is to approve the interim lease with HSP Resources LLC for Herlong One Stop Building.
With the changes.
Yeah. Okay. It's been moved. Do we have a second?
You said
No, I said great.
Well, I'll second the motion. I was actually going to abstain on the vote, but I guess, you know, you need to proceed with that, so. I'm still not happy with what happened with the whole endeavor, but that's something we just need to move on. And I would say, Tom, that you did a good job of negotiating, you and Richard, in terms of negotiating a resolution of this situation.
Well, be that as it may, once the mistake was made, we had to find a resolution to the problem. So we've got the resolution, now we move on.
Exactly. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay, thank you. Let's, I know there's Craig and some other people here for this RCD. Let's go to H8.